There's a good chance you walked past it in the grocery store this week without giving it a second thought. It sits in a plain cardboard canister, costs less than 50 cents a serving, and has been sitting on American breakfast tables for generations. It isn't trendy. There's no influencer pushing it. No expensive supplement company has figured out how to repackage it at 20 times the price. And yet, quietly, consistently, a growing body of nutrition research keeps returning to this humble food and finding something genuinely worth paying attention to, particularly for people over 50 who are thinking carefully about their heart health and blood pressure. That food is oats. Plain, old-fashioned oats. And what research is uncovering about how they interact with the cardiovascular system after midlife is a lot more interesting than the plain cardboard canister would have you believe. Before we get into the science, let's spend a moment on why blood pressure specifically becomes such an important number after 50. Because if you're in that age range, your doctor may have started watching that reading more closely, and there's a real biological reason for that. As we age, the walls of our blood vessels gradually become less elastic. Think of it like a garden hose that's been left in the sun for too many summers. It gets stiffer, less flexible, and it takes more pressure to push water through it. The same thing happens in our arteries over time. The smooth muscle and vessel walls changes in composition. Something called arterial stiffness increases. And when vessels are less elastic, the heart has to work harder to push blood through them, which shows up as higher pressure readings. On top of that, our kidneys become slightly less efficient at regulating sodium and fluid balance as we age, which is another factor that can nudge blood pressure numbers in the wrong direction. None of this is dramatic or sudden, it's a gradual drift that happens across decades. But by our 50s and 60s, these changes are real and measurable, and they matter for long-term heart health. So where do oats come in? The answer lives inside the oat itself, in a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. And understanding what beta-glucan actually does inside your body is the key to understanding why oats show up so reliably in cardiovascular nutrition research. When you eat oats, that beta-glucan fiber dissolves in the water in your digestive tract and forms a thick, gel-like substance. Picture it almost like a slow-moving river of gel moving through your intestines. That gel does something quite specific and quite useful. It binds to bile acids in your gut. Now, bile acids are made by your liver from cholesterol. Your liver needs cholesterol to produce them. When beta-glucan sweeps those bile acids out of your body before they can be reabsorbed, your liver responds by pulling more cholesterol out of your bloodstream to make new ones. The result is that LDL cholesterol, the kind more closely associated with arterial buildup, tends to come down. And while cholesterol and blood pressure are separate measurements, they're deeply connected in the same system, the health of your arteries. Arteries that are less burdened by plaque buildup tend to remain more flexible, and more flexible arteries are one piece of the puzzle in maintaining healthier pressure readings. Nutrition researchers have found this mechanism well documented enough that major health organizations in several countries have approved fiber-related health claims on oat products, which is not something that happens easily in the regulatory world. The second reason oats are interesting for blood pressure is something that gets far less attention: their potassium content. Oats aren't as famous for potassium as bananas or avocados, but a bowl of cooked oats contributes a meaningful amount of this mineral to your daily intake, and potassium plays a direct role in blood pressure regulation. Here's the mechanism. Sodium and potassium work in a kind of balance inside your cells. Sodium encourages the body to retain fluid, which raises blood volume and therefore pressure. Potassium helps the kidneys excrete more sodium through urine, essentially helping to counterbalance sodium's fluid-retaining effect. Research consistently links higher dietary potassium intake with more favorable blood pressure numbers, particularly in populations eating a lot of processed foods, which tend to be high in sodium and low in potassium. Most adults over 50 in Western countries are eating too little potassium and too much sodium. Oats, eaten regularly, nudge that balance in a more helpful direction. Third, and perhaps most broadly, oats are a whole grain. And the research on whole grain consumption and cardiovascular health is among the most consistent in all of nutritional epidemiology. Large observational studies tracking tens of thousands of people over many years have repeatedly found associations between higher whole grain intake and lower rates of cardiovascular disease, including conditions linked to elevated blood pressure. The fiber, the micronutrients, the plant compounds, the way whole grains affect blood sugar stability and insulin sensitivity, all of these work together rather than in isolation. It's not one magic molecule. It's the whole package, which is part of why isolating any single mechanism in a controlled trial is difficult, and part of why honest nutrition scientists are careful to say associated with rather than causes. That nuance matters, and we want to honor it here. Now, practically speaking, how do you actually use this? Oats are genuinely one of the most versatile, simple foods you can build a morning around. A serving of rolled or old-fashioned oats is roughly a half cup dry, which cooks up to a generous bowl. You can cook them on the stovetop in 5 minutes or soak them overnight in the refrigerator with a splash of milk or a dairy-free alternative and wake up to something ready to eat. Top them with a small handful of blueberries or sliced banana, both of which bring their own cardiovascular-friendly compounds, and a light drizzle of honey or a few walnuts. A spoonful of ground flaxseed stirred in adds omega-3s and additional fiber without changing the flavor noticeably. If you find oats boring, think of them less like a finished meal and more like a canvas. They absorb flavor willingly. A pinch of cinnamon, some diced apple, a teaspoon of almond butter, you can eat oats every morning for a month and barely repeat yourself. The key is simply making them a regular part of your routine. Not a one-time event, not a 3-day experiment. Nutrition research on oats and cardiovascular markers consistently looks at regular, habitual consumption, typically daily or near daily, over weeks and months. One bowl isn't going to move the needle. A consistent pattern over time, as part of an overall diet rich in vegetables, fruits, legumes, and lean proteins, is where the plausible benefit accumulates. Now for the honest caveats, because this channel doesn't skip them. Oats are not a treatment for high blood pressure. They are not a substitute for medication your doctor has prescribed. If your blood pressure is in a range your physician considers concerning, a bowl of oatmeal is not what stands between you and a problem your doctor is. People with certain digestive conditions, including some forms of inflammatory bowel disease or celiac disease, may react differently to oats depending on processing and contamination factors, so it's worth a conversation with your healthcare provider if that applies to you. And if you're tracking blood pressure changes and also eating oats, please don't try to self-diagnose cause and effect. Blood pressure fluctuates throughout the day based on stress, sleep, salt intake, hydration, activity, and a dozen other variables. What we're talking about here is a dietary pattern that research suggests may support cardiovascular health over time, as one piece of a much larger lifestyle picture. This video is general nutrition education, not medical advice for your specific situation, and your own doctor, who knows your history and your numbers, is always the right person to talk to about any health goal. So to bring it back to where we started, a plain cardboard canister, less than 50 cents a serving, probably already on a shelf near you. The beta-glucan fiber that nudges cholesterol metabolism in a helpful direction. The potassium that helps your kidneys manage sodium balance. The whole grain package that observational research consistently links to better cardiovascular outcomes over time. None of it is dramatic. None of it is a miracle. But this is how genuine, sustainable nutrition usually works, not in breakthroughs, but in small, daily, compounding choices that quietly support the body you want to live in for the next 30 years. If that kind of calm, honest, evidence-based approach to longevity is what you're looking for, subscribe to Vital After 49. No hype, no miracle cures, just the science, explained